Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. One day in June 1862, a fugitive slave wandered by the camp of the 8th Vermont Infantry in the New Orleans suburb of Algiers. The New Englanders were quartered in spacious rooms of a large railroad depot surrounded by lush grass and covered by a canopy of shade trees. The nearby Mississippi River added to the picturesque nature of the place. The fugitive, bearing the raw marks of shackles on his ankles, was not alone. His owner followed closely behind, overtook him, and ordered the man back to the plantation. The man refused. The stalemate was broken when the enslaver resorted to brute force when he pulled out a leather strap and began lashing the man. As the blows landed and the flogging continued, the commotion reverberated through the camp. The Vermonters, fervent abolitionists almost to a man, hurried to the scene and quickly grasped the situation. They descended on the slave owner, stopped the whipping, and immediately booted him out of camp. Then the Vermonters led the fugitive to safety and protection in their own camp. But not all of the Vermonters held abolitionist views. A number of officers and some of the men held more conservative views on slavery. One of them happened to be the lieutenant colonel, he's pictured here, Edward Marcus Brown. Alerted by the ruckus, he immediately ordered the men into line. Brown launched into a lecture on the inappropriateness of their conduct and pointedly informed them that they were forbidden to meddle with the personal property of citizens, whether in slaves or anything else, he reportedly said. The reaction to Brown's decree did not sit well with the mass of the men who refused to accept or obey him. An historian recounted what happened next. Indignation ran high, and a number of the men, expecting an order to deliver up the Negro who has been secreted in camp, pledged themselves to protect him and to refuse obedience to any such order, even at the cost of trial and punishment for mutiny. The men were willing to risk death to protect the fugitive. Fortunately for them, Brown let the matter drop, perhaps realizing he may be jeopardizing his own authority and very possibly his own life. Though the fugitive's fate is unknown, it is possible he joined others escaping bondage sent to nearby Carrollton, where organizers formed regiments of black men to fight for the Union. Brown's views were well known in Vermont. 2 years earlier, he had attended the National Democratic Convention at Charleston, South Carolina, as a delegate at large and a member of the Platform and Resolutions Committee. Convention delegates failed to select a candidate as no nominee secured the two-thirds majority of votes needed, preventing the frontrunner, Stephen A. Douglas, the U.S. Senator from Illinois, from securing the coveted spot. The convention reconvened in Baltimore, eventually nominating Douglas, but losing the Southern Democrats, who nominated Vice President John C. Breckinridge. The party split contributed to the victory of Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party that autumn and precipitated the secession crisis that erupted in Civil War. Brown happened to be well positioned for the life of a citizen soldier. A native of Heartland, Vermont, and the grandson of two patriots who fought in the Revolution, Brown obtained an education from one of the finest military schools in the country, Norwich University. Though he ranked valedictorian of the class of 1844, by a quirk of fate, Brown never graduated. He had been detached to help establish a branch of the school in Pennsylvania, which caused him to miss the graduation exercises. Though his studies suggested a career lay ahead, a good career as a soldier, he pursued a career instead as a journalist, beginning in 1847 when he became editor and publisher of The Spirit of the Age, a newspaper in Woodstock, Vermont. Active in civil affairs, including the town postmaster, he also kept active in the military as an officer in the Woodstock Light Infantry. During this time, Brown honed his skills as an editor and a writer and sharpened his democratic politics, leading to his attendance at the failed Charleston Convention. Much to the dismay of Woodstock's citizenry, Brown left town in December 1860. The same month, South Carolina declared its separation from the United States. Brown left for a great new job in Montpelier, leading the editorial section of the influential Vermont Patriot. Brown relished the role, using his platform to capture the dangerous moment as a divided nation drifted to war. One of Brown's finest editorials appeared in print on January 12th, 1861. He wrote in part, "Will the Union be preserved? That it has become necessary to ask such a question while yet a remnant of those men who established this Confederacy remain on earth is more humiliating than it would have been ever to have remained the dependencies of another government. The blood of the Revolution was an illy applied sacrifice if, in a little more than three-quarters of a century, while yet linger among us the lengthened shadows of those days, we are compelled to record a dissolution of that fabric which cost so many valuable lives and such a vast amount of treasure. And yet, the events which are now daily crowding upon us are of such a nature as forebodes the most direful consequences. Every day and every hour, the chance of reconciliation diminishes, and some rash act or imprudent step may plunge the country into all the horrors of civil war. There are men who wait to hope from the patriotism or statesmanship of those who, for years, have exerted all their energies to bring about just this state of things. The leaders of the opposition to democracy at the North have made their record out of incendiary speeches and votes insulting to one section of the Union. And now exasperation is seeking revenge, if not a reasonable, at least in a legitimate way. But the politicians have brought the country into peril with no reasonable prospect of extricating it. There is but one course to be pursued. The people, always patriotic and always imbued with a love of justice, must make themselves heard and felt in this emergency. They must reaffirm the emphatic language of Andrew Jackson: the Union, it must and shall be preserved. And rising superior to party, make a united and determined effort to vindicate the assertion. It is no time now to make stump speeches for humanity. The time has arrived when the earnest men must act and the real patriots give counsel. Rumors have already gained credence of a premeditated attack from the South upon Washington for the purpose of preventing the inauguration at the seat of government of a president constitutionally elected. To prevent such a disgrace falling upon the country, a disgrace which would enrapture all who have regarded self government or a government in which the people rule, a chimera, a more than Spartan firmness should take possession of every true friend to the Constitution and the Union. But first of all, let us set ourselves right. If we are to hang traitors, let us do it with clean hands. Brown's editorial continued on, ending with the sentiment that to preserve the Union, the North must reject partisan extremism, enforce laws justly, remove radical leaders, and unite firmly against existing forces of disunion in the North and the South. Brown held firm on these principles after he joined the Union Army. In August 1861, he began his service as first lieutenant and adjutant of the 5th Vermont Infantry. Dispatched to the defenses of Washington, D.C., Brown resigned in January 1862, just months after joining the regiment, to accept a lieutenant colonel's commission in the 8th. Ordered to Louisiana, the regiment trained at Ship Island before taking up various guard duties in New Orleans in May 1862 as part of the command of Major General Benjamin F. Butler. An officer in the 8th noted, "The people of the city were in a state of ugliness and vindictiveness hardly to be expressed. Men and women seemed to be filled with the spirit of the evil one. But the stern hand of General Butler had a very salutary effect." Butler, of course, proved a thorn in the side of New Orleans locals, drawing their ire in the form of jokes, fabricated stories, and the nickname Beast Butler. Butler, who had risen from the political ranks to become a general, had been a loyal Democrat prior to switching his allegiance to the Republican Party in 1861. At some point, possibly during his tenure as a Democrat, he learned of Brown's abilities as an editor and publisher. In late 1862, Butler had need for a man of Brown's talents. The Daily Delta, the fearless newspaper in New Orleans, had run afoul of Butler with its Southern sympathetic stories and editorials after the general had censored the city press. Butler responded by tapping Brown and two other officers to be the Delta's new editors. The new staff, published twice a day with a circulation of 10,000, with Brown and his fellow editors keeping a watchful eye for all the news fit to print, of course, under General Butler's censorship rules. Brown resigned his commission in December 1862, about the time President Lincoln removed Butler from command of the New Orleans and Department of the Gulf Forces, replacing him with another political general, Nathaniel P. Banks. The connection of Brown and Butler is noteworthy. Politically, the Republican Butler enjoyed the support of radical elements in politics. Brown, on the other hand, the Democrat, railed against radical elements in government. Nonetheless, following Brown's return to Montpelier, Butler called on him again. In early 1864, Butler, now commander of the Department of Virginia and North Carolina and the Army of the James, invited Brown to publish a daily newspaper and attend to other printing needs at Fortress Monroe. Brown occupied this position until the end of the war. Back in Vermont in 1865, Brown reduced his workload due to health issues that he attributed to the service. Meanwhile, he contributed to local newspapers and accepted an appointment as the official reporter for the Vermont Senate. This time off or reduced workload enabled him to spend more time with his wife, Jerusha, and 5 children. Brown had one more grand adventure left. In 1873, he and his family relocated to the frontier town of Yankton in Dakota Territory. He became editor-in-chief and one of the publishers of the Press and Dakotan newspaper. Moving to Bismarck the following year, he served in various appointed offices connected to government lands. In 1890, a year after South Dakota gained statehood, the Browns left for Minnesota and settled for the last chapter of their lives in St. Paul. Brown died there in 1903 at age 82. So thank you for listening to the story of Edward Brown, military educated, a veteran of the Civil War, and later on, a territorial newspaper editor and government office holder in Yankton and Bismarck, Dakota Territory in South Dakota. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.